Chapter 8 of The Death of Ivan Ilyitch by Leo Tolstoy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. It was morning. All that made it morning for Ivan Ilyitch was that Gerasim had gone away and Pyotr the footman had come in. He had put out the candles, opened one of the curtains, and begun surreptitiously setting the room to rights. Whether it were morning or evening, Friday or Sunday, it all made no difference. It was always just the same thing. Gnawing, agonizing pain never ceasing for an instant, the hopeless sense of life always ebbing away, but still not yet gone, always swooping down on him that fearful, hated death, which was the only reality, and always the same falsity. What were days, or weeks, or hours of the day to him? "Will you have tea, sir?" He wants things done in their regular order. In the morning the family should have tea, he thought, and only said, "No." "Would you care to move on to the sofa?" He wants to make the room tidy, and I'm in his way. I'm uncleanness, disorder, he thought, and only said, "No, leave me alone." The servant still moved busily about his work. Ivan Ilyitch stretched out his hand. Pyotr went up to offer his services. "What can I get you?" "My watch." Pyotr got out the watch, which lay just under his hand, and gave it him. 8:30. Are they up?" "Not yet, sir. Vladimir Ivanovitch," that was his son, "has gone to the high school, and Praskovya Fyodorovna gave orders that she was to be waked if you asked for her. Shall I send word?" "No, no need. Should I try some tea?" he thought. "Yes, tea. Bring it." Pyotr was on his way out. Ivan Ilyitch felt frightened of being left alone. How keep him? Oh, the medicine. "Pyotr, give me my medicine." Oh, well, maybe medicine may still be some good. He took the spoon, drank it. No, it does no good. It's all rubbish, deception, he decided, as soon as he tasted the familiar, mawkish, hopeless taste. No, I can't believe it now. But the pain, why this pain, if it would only cease for a minute? And he groaned. Pyotr turned round. "No, go on. Bring the tea." Pyotr went away. Ivan Ilyitch, left alone, moaned, not so much from the pain, awful as it was, as from misery. Always the same thing again and again, all these endless days and nights. If it would only be quicker. Quicker to what? Death, darkness. No, no, anything better than death. When Pyotr came in with the tea on a tray, Ivan Ilyitch stared for some time absent-mindedly at him, not grasping who he was and what he wanted. Pyotr was disconcerted by this stare. And when he showed he was disconcerted, Ivan Ilyitch came to himself. "Oh yes," he said. "Tea. Good. Set it down. Only help me to wash and put on a clean shirt." And Ivan Ilyitch began his washing. He washed his hands slowly, and then his face, cleaned his teeth, combed his hair, and looked in the looking-glass. He felt frightened at what he saw, especially at the way his hair clung limply to his pale forehead. When his shirt was being changed, he knew he would be still more terrified if he glanced at his body, and he avoided looking at himself. But at last it was all over. He put on his dressing gown, covered himself with a rug, and sat in the armchair to drink his tea. For one moment he felt refreshed. But as soon as he began to drink the tea, again there was the same taste, the same pain. He forced himself to finish it, and lay down, stretching out his legs. He lay down and dismissed Pyotr. Always the same. A gleam of hope flashes for a moment, and then again the sea of despair roars about him again, and always pain, always pain, always heartache, and always the same thing. Alone it is awfully dreary. He longs to call someone, but he knows beforehand that with others present it will be worse. Morphine again, only to forget again. I'll tell him, the doctor, that he must think of something else. It can't go on. It can't go on like this. 1 hour, 2 hours pass like this. Then there is a ring at the front door. The doctor, perhaps. Yes, it is the doctor, fresh, hearty, fat, and cheerful, wearing that expression that seems to say, "You there are in a panic about something, but we'll soon set things right for you." The doctor is aware that this expression is hardly fitting here, but he has put it on once and for all, and can't take it off, like a man who has put on a frock coat to pay a round of calls. In a hearty, reassuring manner, the doctor rubs his hands. "I'm cold. It's a sharp frost. Just let me warm myself," he says with an expression, as though it's only a matter of waiting a little till he's warm, and as soon as he's warm he'll set everything to rights. "Well now, how are you?" Ivan Ilyitch feels that the doctor would like to say, "How's the little trouble?" but that he feels that he can't talk like that, and says, "How did you pass the night?" Ivan Ilyitch looks at the doctor with an expression that asks, "Is it possible you're never ashamed of lying?" But the doctor does not care to understand this look. And Ivan Ilyitch says, "It's always just as awful. The pain never leaves me, never ceases. If only there were something." "Ah, you're all like that. All sick people say that." "Come now, I do believe I'm thawed. Even Praskovya Fyodorovna, who's so particular, could find no fault with my temperature. Well, now I can say good morning." And the doctor shakes hands. And dropping his former levity, the doctor, with a serious face, proceeds to examine the patient, feeling his pulse, to take his temperature, and then the tappings and soundings begin. Ivan Ilyitch knows positively and indubitably that it's all nonsense and empty deception, but when the doctor, kneeling down, stretches over him, putting his ear first higher, then lower, and goes through various gymnastic evolutions over him with a serious face, Ivan Ilyitch is affected by this, as he used sometimes to be affected by the speeches of the lawyers in court, though he was perfectly well aware that they were telling lies all the while, and why they were telling lies. The doctor, kneeling on the sofa, was still sounding him when there was the rustle of Praskovya Fyodorovna's silk dress in the doorway, and she was heard scolding Pyotr for not having let her know that the doctor had come. She comes in, kisses her husband, and at once begins to explain that she has been up a long while, and that it was only through a misunderstanding that she was not there when the doctor came. Ivan Ilyitch looks at her, scans her all over, and sets down against her her whiteness and plumpness, and the cleanness of her hands and neck, and the glossiness of her hair, and the gleam full of life in her eyes. With all the force of his soul he hates her. And when she touches him it makes him suffer from the thrill of hatred he feels for her. Her attitude to him and his illness is still the same. Just as the doctor had taken up a certain line with the patient which he was now not able to drop, so she too had taken up a line with him, that he was not doing something he ought to do, and was himself to blame, and she was lovingly reproaching him for his neglect, and she could not now get out of this attitude. "Why, you know he won't listen to me. He doesn't take his medicine at the right times. And what's worse still, he insists on lying in a position that surely must be bad for him, with his legs in the air." She described how he made Gerasim hold his legs up. The doctor smiled with kindly condescension that said, "Oh, well, it can't be helped. These sick people do take up such foolish fancies, but we must forgive them." When the examination was over, the doctor looked at his watch, and then Praskovya Fyodorovna informed Ivan Ilyitch that it must, of course, be as he liked, but she had sent today for a celebrated doctor, and that he would examine him and have a consultation with Mihail Danilevitch. That was the name of their regular doctor. "Don't oppose it now, please. This I'm doing entirely for my own sake," she said ironically, meaning it to be understood that she was doing it all for his sake, and was only saying this to give him no right to refuse her request. He lay silent, knitting his brows. He felt that he was hemmed in by such a tangle of falsity that it was hard to disentangle anything from it. Everything she did for him was entirely for her own sake, and she told him she was doing for her own sake what she actually was doing for her own sake, as something so incredible that he would take it as meaning the opposite. At 11:30 the celebrated doctor came. Again came the sounding, and then grave conversation in his presence and in the other room about the kidney and the appendix, and questions and answers, with such an air of significance, that again, instead of the real question of life and death, which was now the only one that confronted him, the question that came uppermost was of the kidney and the appendix, which were doing something not as they ought to do, and were, for that reason, being attacked by Mihail Danilevitch and the celebrated doctor, and forced to mend their ways. The celebrated doctor took leave of him with a serious, but not a hopeless face. And to the timid question that Ivan Ilyitch addressed to him while he lifted his eyes, shining with terror and hope, up towards him, was there a chance of recovery? He answered that he could not answer for it, but that there was a chance. The look of hope with which Ivan Ilyitch watched the doctor out was so piteous that, seeing it, Praskovya Fyodorovna positively burst into tears as she went out of the door to hand the celebrated doctor his fee in the next room. The gleam of hope kindled by the doctor's assurance did not last long. Again the same room, the same pictures, the curtains, the wallpaper, the medicine bottles, and, ever the same, his aching, suffering body. And Ivan Ilyitch began to moan. They gave him injections, and he sank into oblivion. When he waked up it was getting dark. They brought him his dinner. He forced himself to eat some broth. And again everything the same. And again the coming night. After dinner at 7 o'clock, Praskovya Fyodorovna came into his room, dressed as though to go to a soiree, with her full bosom laced in tight, and traces of powder on her face. She had, in the morning, mentioned to him that they were going to the theater. Sarah Bernhardt was visiting the town, and they had a box which he had insisted on their taking. By now he had forgotten about it, and her smart attire was an offense to him. But he concealed this feeling when he recollected that he had himself insisted on their taking a box and going, because it was an aesthetic pleasure, beneficial and instructive for the children. Praskovya Fyodorovna came in satisfied with herself, but yet with something of a guilty air. She sat down, asked how he was, as he saw, simply for the sake of asking, and not for the sake of learning anything, knowing indeed that there was nothing to learn, and began telling him how absolutely necessary it was, how she would not have gone for anything, but the box had been taken, and Ellen, their daughter, and Petrushef, the examining lawyer, the daughter's suitor, were going, and that it was out of the question to let them go alone. But that she would have liked much better to stay with him, if only he would be sure to follow the doctor's prescription while she was away. Oh, and Fyodor Dmitrievitch, the suitor, would like to come in. May he? And Lisa? Yes, let them come in. The daughter came in full dress, her fresh young body bare, while his body made him suffer so. But she made a show of it. She was strong, healthy, obviously in love, and impatient of the illness, suffering, and death that hindered her happiness. Fyodor Dmitrievitch came in too in evening dress, his hair curled à la Capoule, with his long sinewy neck tightly fenced round by a white collar, with his vast expanse of white chest and strong thighs displayed in narrow black trousers, with one white glove in his hand, and a crush opera hat. Behind him crept in unnoticed the little high school boy in his new uniform, poor fellow, in gloves and with that awful blue ring under his eyes that Ivan Ilyitch knew the meaning of. He always felt sorry for his son. And pitiable indeed was his scared face of sympathetic suffering. Except Gerasim, Ivan Ilyitch fancied that Volodya was the only one that understood and was sorry. They all sat down. Again they asked how he was. A silence followed. Lisa asked her mother about the opera glass. An altercation ensued between the mother and daughter as to who had taken it and where it had been put. It turned into an unpleasant squabble. Fyodor Dmitrievitch asked Ivan Ilyitch whether he had seen Sarah Bernhardt. Ivan Ilyitch could not at first catch the question that was asked him, but then he said, "No. Have you seen her before?" "Yes, in Adrienne Lecouvreur." Praskovya Fyodorovna observed that she was particularly good in that part. The daughter made some reply. A conversation sprang up about the art and naturalness of her acting, that conversation that is continually repeated and always the same. In the middle of the conversation Fyodor Dmitrievitch glanced at Ivan Ilyitch and relapsed into silence. The others looked at him and became mute too. Ivan Ilyitch was staring with glittering eyes straight before him, obviously furious with them. This had to be set right, but it could not anyhow be set right. This silence had somehow to be broken. No one would venture on breaking it, and all began to feel alarmed that the decorous deception was somehow breaking down, and the facts would be exposed to all. Lise was the first to pluck up courage. She broke the silence. She tried to cover up what they were all feeling, but inadvertently she gave it utterance. "If we are going, though, it's time to start," she said, glancing at her watch, a gift from her father, and with a scarcely perceptible meaning smile to the young man, referring to something only known to themselves, she got up with a rustle of her skirts. They all got up, said good-bye, and went away. When they were gone Ivan Ilyitch fancied he was easier. There was no falsity. That had gone away with them. But the pain remained. That continual pain, that continual terror made nothing harder, nothing easier. It was always worse. Again came minute after minute, hour after hour, still the same and still no end, and ever more terrible the inevitable end. "Yes, send Gerasim," he said in answer to Pyotr*s question. End of chapter 8, read by Laurianne Walden.